All right. As we find a place to sit, we're going to start with this morning session. There's still a few seats over there for people that want to join in. Welcome, everyone. Good morning. It's a full house today. It's great to see. This is the Wool Talks here at Dutch Design Week. I'm Haiko. I'll be your host for today's panel. Throughout this program, we've tried to uncover different perspectives on wool, because wool is a material that has been with us for thousands of years. But yet there's also a lot of questions and a lot of things we might not know about the material. And especially when we found out that 1.5 million kilograms of Dutch wool are being wasted every year, that was a trigger for us to start our journey into wool with our platform. Wool Talks is an initiative that we are introducing this year to invite experts, designers to the stage to learn together. Also an invitation for you in the audience to ask your questions and join the conversation with us. And every day we try to have a specific theme. Today's theme is about regenerative pioneers. I think we have two amazing individuals, but also initiatives here represented in the panel that do great stuff with wool that we can learn a lot from. And we try to centralize our talks around a question that we try to understand. And that question for today is, what can we learn from pioneers who are redefining textiles and fashion in regenerative, locally rooted ways? And how can their work be an example for a better industry? So that's the question we'll try to uncover today. I think it's a nice moment also to introduce my panelists. Claudy, Jongstra, welcome. Could you explain the audience in a few sentences what Lood's collection is about?
I've been working with wool for the last 30 years, making artworks for interiors and public spaces. We have developed this holistic circular chain for the last 30 years, collaborating with people who are really willing to transform. The artworks are very personal, a very personal autograph. We're also thinking about the future of the studio. My youngest son, Jesk, one day he said 2 years ago, why do we not think of a new idea to rescale your holistic chain, what you've been developing for the last 30 years together with Claudia, my partner, and see if we can redefine a new label and then scale to have more impact on clothing, but also on interiors.
It's about capturing all these years of experience and knowledge and making it into a new initiative that can drive the regenerative transition forward. Reina, Ovinge from the Knitwit Stable. What is the initiative about?
I come from the fast fashion industry, and it's quite a broken system. After stopping my company in fast fashion, I started with 2 goats. And then I came up with the Knitwit Stable, doing education, but also our own label. We have our sheep farm.
And I think we have many more things to talk about as you've prepared some slides. I'm going to give this to you, and you can take over for the next minute or 10, 15, and then we'll reflect together on what we've seen.
Thank you. First, I have a very small movie, so you can come in it.
Generaties lang bood de wollen AP-deken geborgenheid en warmte in talloze Nederlandse huishoudens. Ik wilde met de Knitwit Stable traditie, ambacht, innovatie en duurzaamheid samenbrengen en besloot daarom de wollen deken nieuw leven in te blazen. De AB Knitwit deken wordt gemaakt van wol afkomstig van de Keppische heideschapen. Zij zijn essentieel voor het behoud van Nederlandse heidelandschappen. De wol is met zorg gesponnen en verwerkt in een traditionele dekenfabriek in Noord-Italië.
So this is the start, wool as a driver for change. And just explain, I come from the fashion industry, first as a buyer, and then I became a producer. And at some point in my career, I said, this is enough. I worked a lot in Bangladesh, started in Italy, and then working in Bangladesh at the end for all chain stores in the Netherlands, from the Bijenkorf to the Watsons and the Kruidvat. And then I got 2 coats for my birthday, Billy and Betsy. And later I bought 2 sheep, Track and Trace. That was the start of a long journey, really reconnecting to nature and making goods in a very different way. This was the start of the farm. We have about 50 sheep nowadays, mostly merino. We have 25 Angora goats. We have a small-scale production factory, so we have 3 industrial knitting machines, and we are knitting woolen products. And above all, we are also an education center. I want to show you the situation now in the Netherlands. It was, I think, already told, but we have about 1.5 million kilo every year, which is or exported or wasted or even burned. And we have approx 800,000 sheep in the Netherlands. Milk sheep, grazing sheep, and a lot of meat sheep. This is in the whole of Europe, not only in the Netherlands, but the whole of Europe we have the same problem. It's such a pity that it's so undervalued, because it's also a pity for the farmers that they cannot use it, and it's a pity for the biodiversity that we are wasting such nice material. And this is to show that we have a lot of monoculture in the Netherlands. This is what we know, and we think, oh, this is nice, but this is actually a lot of raygrass. It's a green desert, and there's no tree to shelter, and there are no hedges. So we are used to this view, but actually it's monoculture, it's no biodiversity. It's bad for the soil. We all know what would happen if we have 10% of the synthetic fiber changed in natural fiber. That would be a huge difference and also helpful for the biodiversity and not the microplastics we have. This is the current situation in the world. I think it's nice to show that before 1960, after the World War, we didn't have any synthetic fiber. We only had natural fibers like cotton, hemp, nettle, flax, and wool, of course. And you can see also from 1960, we had this big disbalance in carbon dioxide. And this is all because of the fossil industry really increasing. And of course, our land and ocean, they, via photosynthesis, they are absorbing the carbon dioxide, because actually carbon dioxide is food for health, for life. But the balance is gone. And it's such a shame that now our sheep and the nature, and especially the wool, is said that is the cause of a lot of problems in the industry. But it's not, it's the fossil industry. And if you see this line, you see the next line. So this is what happened after World War, 1960. You see a big coming up from the synthetic. I give a lot of education, and if I ask the students where are synthetics made from, acrylic, nylon, polyester, 90% is looking like this, and then 1 or 2 said, oh, it's from the oil. So we are wearing a lot of plastic, but we don't, and we have a big energy transition, but we don't think about clothing that it's a source of fossil. So you see, wool was 68%. It's now only 1% of the world's textiles, and that's not only in fashion, but also in the furniture, because we don't have woolen carpets anymore or upholstery. It's all also synthetic. And of course, the problem with synthetic is that it gives microplastics and will never go into the soil. It's persistent in nature. So what if we change this whole system and have a really biocircular chain, not taking from nature and dumping it somewhere in Africa or East Europe, and make it really regenerative and a round circle. So starting with the sheep, and then the processing, that's a difficult point because you need a lot of water, and also the dyeing can be harmful. This is the point what we have to take care in the wool industry. Then the design and making, taking care, if you make something, especially with designers, check how you can recycle it and what can be done. This is the user phase. Of course, we have to first think, refuse, rethink, reuse, repair. If it's synthetic, it will go into the soil. So it's quite important if it would go into compost. If we have wool and it's compostable and biodegradable, then it can be back into the soil, carbon sink, and then you have a really bio-circle. We have a lot of challenges. We have a big image problem for the European wool. It's yellow, it's very thick, it's coarse, it smells. And does everybody know about the micron? The fiber thickness is the micron, and the thicker the fiber, the more itchy. So if it's thick, then it itches on your skin, and if it's fine, then it bends on your skin. All wool is the same, but only the thickness makes that it sometimes can feel itchy, but we prefer to call it strong wool. Then we have bad data in the life cycle analysis and the product environment footprint label, which is coming now from Brussels. And well, in the end, it's said now that a polyester t-shirt from Bangladesh is better than a woolen sweater. A lot of people are working on this, and there is some progress, so that's nice.
Maybe not too soon, but changing the mindset, is that the biggest challenge? Like, just let people buy clothing that can break down, not like
The idea of consistency in the fiber, that's the beauty of polyester, which is horrible, but the biggest challenge is to tell consumers that it's okay that things can break down or that there's a hole and you can fix it.
The
Storage is a challenge,
storytelling
right?
and the education is key. We have a lot of processing infrastructure gaps in Europe. The wool cannot go anywhere. For the farmer, they don't earn anything anymore. There's no factory anymore in the Netherlands. The last factory went down in 1996. That was the last processing in the Netherlands on industrial scale. And then we have a big challenge to breed better, because it has no value anymore. So farmers just put it in a big bale. In the past, we were selecting it. And then for the A-wool, you got 25 guilder per fleece in the 90s.
Australia producing a lot of wool. What are they doing with that?
Yeah, that's the merino wool. So that's the finer wool. In the Netherlands and in Europe, we have stronger, thicker wool. But in Australia, they have the merino wool. That's the merino breed, which is the biggest breed of the world. And that's a finer wool. Yeah. So now maybe this is just an explanation of what we do at the Knitwit Stable to show what we can do. I hope this is something we can all learn about. I think working together is the most important thing. What we have at the Knitwit Stable is merino sheep, because I'm from the fashion, and so this is a very nice wool. We have Angora goats, and Angora, you have also the Angora rabbit, but one is a goat and the other one is a rabbit. And the Angora goat gives mohair, and the Angora rabbit gives Angora. The only thing which they have in common is that they come from Angora mountains, which is nowadays Ankara. Then we have the alpaca. We don't have them because we are already busy enough, but we collect all the alpaca in the Netherlands. And we are using a lot of camp and heat sheep, and we have some collaborations with farmers and breeders. To inform how it's working, you have shearing once a year, sometimes once in 9 months. The sorting is quite important, and we have to bale it and send it to Italy, because there's no wool processing in the Netherlands anymore on this scale. And then we scour. Washing wool is scouring. We do that in north of Italy. Then they make top, they card and they comb it. We do the dyeing, and after that also the spinning is taking place in Italy. And then, of course, you can weave it or knit it. We are doing the knitting. We have 3 knitting machines. After that, we knit the panels, which cost about 1 hour, 1.5 hours per sweater. And then we have to link the panels, the sleeves with the body. That takes about 2 hours. We have to do the finishing with volunteers. Our sweaters will be around 400 or 500 euro, but we need volunteers to make it work, because in Holland we earn about 200 euro per day, which is normally the cost of somebody in Bangladesh for 1 month. So there's the big difference. This is what we make, and it's extremely, we want to connect nature with the textile again. So that's also our mission. So revalue the wool, making regenerative system, and then connect nature with the textile fiber again. The wool we can't use, we make wool pellets out of it. It is a nice fertilizer. We can also make felt. And for example, the young goats give very nice soft hair, just like babies. But the elder, just like people, getting gray, and your hair is getting a little bit less. So it's not wearable on your skin anymore. Then we make throws out of it. We do a lot of collaborations just to make more impact and to keep our machines running in summer. It's nice to see that, for example, Joe Merino, we started 5 years back here at the Dutch Design Week with 250 pieces, and now we are doing 2,500 pieces with them each year. So it really replaces the merino which they are buying. We also have a collaboration with Seavia. We connect land and sea together, because that's the most important. And then we dye with seaweed. I think, is the key, education. That's why I started all this, to do the education. We have a lot of students coming. We have farmers coming. We have shearers coming. We have people from the European Parliament came to us just to understand how the chain is going and how it works. Storytelling, education, that is really a very important point. This is our future innovations. Regenerative landscapes, I think, where I live in Baanbrugge, compared to Friesland, we have a lot of grass. But next year we will make feeder hedges, putting trees back in the meadow to make more biodiversity and regenerative. For example, socks cannot do without any synthetic. We want to change the synthetic in the sock for something bio-based or natural to have the right strength. Compostable collection, still in our garden, but next month we will take it out and check how long it will take to biodegrade a sweater. What you saw, the dyeing is the most harmful thing, so we are really trying to make that better. We have a lot of willows close to Amsterdam, where I live, and we will try to make pigments out of it to dye our collection. And we have a lot of undyed materials.
Thank you so much for your contribution. Thank you so much for all the information about wool. But Claudy, I think there are also many elements that were mentioned, like natural dyes, which are very relevant and recognizable for what you do with Loads collection, of course. So we can start with the video.
Started in response to the textile industry's global impact, Loads collection crafts textiles from biodynamic farms with a radically different approach.
Our vision has always been to reconnect and to bring awareness to people with the origins of what they wear, what they use, and what they cherish.
Co-founded by Jongstra and textile artist Claudy Jongstra, who brings over 30 years of experience in plant-based pigments and biodynamic methods. Loads has developed a scalable model for textile production grounded in collaboration and material integrity.
Biodynamic farming. It's about nurturing the soil, caring for animals, and fostering biodiversity.
Demeter International has certified farms committed to holistic, regenerative agriculture. By partnering with Loads, Demeter takes a pioneering step, bringing biodynamic certification to both plants for coloring and textiles.
This partnership is groundbreaking. It's a recognition that textiles, like food, can embody biodynamic principles and offer healthier and non-toxic environments.
When designers, architects, or brands partner with Loads, they're investing in a truly biodynamic process, authentic, transparent, and holistic by nature.
Loads Collection and Demeter International, together redefining the future of textiles.
Biodynamic farming. That's new to me.
If you look to the food world and you see Demeter as a label, which means that the whole practice of the producer is holistic. The criteria for this certifications are quite strict. It's the only independent certification. It's international. It means that you work not only organic, but it goes much further. The plants are grown, they are always set in a social context. You have to engage to educational projects. It's the full chain. And for us, it was very important to distinguish Loads from all the certificates. People lose complete track, but this means every partner is known, fully checked, fair pricing, and yeah, it's 100% traceable. And even the social enterprises, they visit it, they see how are the working conditions. It took us quite a few years to collaborate with International Demeter Federation, and for us it's fantastic because it really shows that the only perspective is if we value the whole chain.
Yeah. If I understand it correctly, it's also the first time this was applied to textiles, where it's normally a food certification. How did that come to be? Because there's so much overlap between the two.
For us, textile is a tool for change. If you've collaborated with farmers who grow these plants, for them it means income. It's not only monoculture, a lot of monoculture in the Netherlands, but also in Europe. So it's diversity of crops. And what you see when you grow these plants in a farm place, for example, in Spain, the whole community helps harvesting. In the value of the color, there are many layers. And we always connect the projects that we do with the farmers. We always implement educational projects. The Waltham Place farm in the UK is very close to London. We collaborate with students from Central St. Martin's. So we always do programs on the farm with students and develop masterclasses.
I think that's a parallel. I also heard in Reina's story last year we spoke about seaweed and had Julia Lohman from Aalto University here. And she mentioned that she took students into the natural environment of where the fiber comes from. And that sounds to me like you're doing something similar with getting it into an environment where the sheep live. The whole biodiversity around that ecosystem is also present.
If you study regenerative fashion, the better connection you can make is literally be on the farm and be part of the process for a certain time, because then you experience the time-consuming processes. The difference between food is in food, there is a lot of value where the tomatoes come from or olives come from. We value in food a lot of these qualities. And for textiles, it's strange that we have different opinions about that. And we noticed when we started with Loads to collaborate with partners. In the clothing industry, it was quite hard, but because it's always about pricing. For example, this sweater is on the right. This is Merino from Spain. There is one spinning company left in Spain, Wool Dreamers. It's a family-owned company. It means that they don't do volumes, and what it makes them so special, I think, that they have these specifics that they have from generation to generation, this connection. I wanted to show you something. We were in Japan 2 weeks ago, and we did a field trip to a lot of the indigo, traditional indigo dyes. And this is 20th generation of indigo. And when you speak about the color, people have so much proud to make this for the next generations because it's an imprint for the family. But also these dyers have a hard time because it takes a lot of knowledge, energy, and time to make these colors. If we lose this, the world loses a lot. We brought our own wool from our own trans heat, but what is in this color, this is a representation of so many values. And I was very impressed because the indigo dyers, especially the young generation, are very open. We started a collaboration now with them to bring perspectives to lost knowledge.
Deeply rooted in culture, tradition, family heritage. And it's also a lot about values to preserve and to pass on this knowledge and these craftsman skills. What can we learn from Japanese culture when we look at how they, for example, approach the indigo and how we in the Netherlands might approach it from similar points of view or values?
I think the government in certain countries like Japan, but also in France, not only you feel respect, but also that there is a lot of funding for preservation of the coming futures. So that's a big difference. France is the first country in the world having regenerative fashion in the curriculum. And France is really pushing sustainability. I was in the World Expo in Osaka. What did we see in the French pavilion? It's all about heritage and the transformation to sustainability. That's a completely different narrative, I would say, than other pavilions.
Yeah. Is that a question?
A question that comes to mind is earlier Reina said something about the data that is wrong in the sense that it's working against the use of wool, the fabrication of your wool. You also talk about how governments should pitch in more. Aren't we missing research in this field more to counter the wrong data, but also to be an input for the European government or national governments to support?
I was in Brussels 3 weeks ago and giving a lecture about these topics. There are two things. I think there are now data about biodynamic farming versus organic farming versus traditional farming, conventional farming. It's a 45-year-old study from a university in Germany. Biodynamic farming scores 31% more biodiversity. There are data now. The thing with legislation and law is these sheep from the Netherlands are completely different than the sheep of Australia. There is no diversification, starting with information and connecting to the real sources, because this is our sheep, they are really restoring land, but it's a completely different story.
One of the examples that really stuck with me was the function of hedges around the grasslands that the sheep would live. How does that influence the biodiversity and the health, maybe even of the sheep? Is that's something that I found very interesting to learn about.
There is so much to tell about the value of sheep, not only the wool, but also how they walk. They compress the soil, but don't make it compact. We have hedges now, and they're naturally laid. So there are natural fences, and the sheep graze. It's a diverse hedge that reflects on the quality of the wool. When we see other wool qualities, we see under what conditions the sheep live and work. Because for us, their mission is to work, and they maintain the land in a natural way, on the direction of a shepherd, because it's not the beautiful pastoral image, the shepherd with a stick and just viewing and dreaming over the land, but it's very complex, it's very specific. And if we would not keep sheep for maintaining our land, the land becomes a forest, but you have to know what you are doing.
Landscape management is a skill that's very traditional and important for biodiversity. There might be some questions from the audience. Yeah.
Small question, have problems with wolves?
We have a night shelter for the sheep. The shepherds now work with the wolves, you can say. Yeah.
They work with the wolves. Yeah, Oscar, we do have to realize that wolves, like it's all the same ecosystem, right? So there's like it's a completely natural relationship. So to work with wolves is the only answer in this regenerative context.
There were always extremities due to climate changes. That's why one of the main reasons is we grow these crops for color, the local ones, the historical ones. Biodynamic farmers, they can win their own seeds from their plants. As the Monsanto business is huge, and because they can win their own seeds on their own land, they're much more resilient than other crops. That's very important.
You just mentioned a sweater is about 500 euros. We have a financial problem. So how are you looking at scaling up to get closer to, let's say, a standard confection? Because there are a lot of advantages even when you take into consideration the land, the pollution, etc. But even then, for many people, this will be still an elite type of clothing. So how are you going to tackle that?
Yeah, for me, this jacket was made by a tailor in Brussels. I know this man, I know where it comes from. And this jacket I will wear for 25 years. So the people who buying loads, fabrics, clothing was interesting. They were mainly educators, people being part of the chain. And what we see is that we are completely transparent about pricing, but there is no cheaper way in producing. The whole system of this cheap polyester clothing doesn't keep us warm.
Reina, your perspective on this question of scale and affordability. And I do agree with the mindset shift and appreciation and have less, but what's your perspective on that?
Well, the current standard for clothing is very strange, of course. It's much too low. So if you buy a sweater of 10 or 19 euro, it's not a real price. It's always a very difficult discussion, but I think we have to take care of our clothing much more. We don't need all these clothes. There is a lot to do, and I think there are a lot of challenges. But to say that the standard from what's now, it's not the right standard. So we can't start from that point.
Yeah, and maybe from this economical point of view, it always starts somewhere, right? And it's more expensive, and then as more people start to appreciate it, other people might be incentivized to also start practicing biodynamic farming practices. And then you get this waterfall effect where it becomes more accessible and more affordable. Hopefully we can see similar things as in the linear economy with the circular one.
You spoke a lot about the fact of composting, the price of not composting all the synthetic and the polyesters. Synthetic clothing and interior are responsible for 20% of the water pollution in the world. Who's going to pay for that? So it's more than just the pricing and the linear thinking.
Yeah, there's also the social and ecological impact that is not being accounted for. It's not calculated into the price. I do want to go to the question in the back.
I was wondering about the life cycle assessment and the PET. Does that have an influence, the subsidies or the money that is available for farmers? Because you said like a polyester t-shirt that's considered better in the life cycle assessment than a woolen or a wool sweater. Could that influence the price indirectly?
It has a very bad influence on consumers, because if you get a label mentioning that it's worse to buy a woolen sweater than polyester. This morning I read the last paper from the International Wool Trade Organization. It's a movement concerning this. And now the IWTO is in the technical board. So there's some changes already. The data which are used are not correct. They just give parameters to the wrong side, and they don't consider the microplastics and the oil. So now they are changing that, and that might be a big difference. This kind of labels can be very influenced for people in the industry, but also for the consumer. So it's important that the label is correct, because it's nice if there is a label, a product environment label, but it should be the right one.
Thank you.
There's a question all the way in the top on the other side.
Thank you. I have a question on something that I was pretty sure about, and now after the presentation, I'm confused. We're here presenting at Dutch Design Week our work on Italian rustic wool, which is also wasted and is a byproduct of the milk industry. Every single person has told me we have the same problem in Holland. And I was in the understanding that the wool from the local sheep can be used for clothes, which our wool cannot. It's not even just an itchiness that you get used to. You cannot use it on your body, not even for upholstery, because it's just too thick, rightfully. Now I'm trying to understand, because you said you have merinos and alpaca. No, you collect the alpacas. So can the local sheep be used for clothes?
Yes, I'm using mostly the lamb wool and the A wool, so the better wool, and then you have also the B and the C wool. But for clothing, I use the better wool. For the lamb's wool and the nicest wool, that's very usable. This one, which I'm wearing, is 60% Campy seed sheep, And then we add a 20% merino and a little bit of alpaca. So you get a very nice touch. It's also about innovation because we can use Dutch wool.
Because also we use wool for fillings, cushions, acoustic panels. So we use a lot of wool, the repurposed wool, not in clothing, but just in other products.
That's how our Italian wool was used for mattresses, and now everybody wants memory foam. So throw that in the garbage after 2 years. The only problem is the demand of the customer and the supply chain, then the only limit in using the local wool.
In Italy, it's a little bit different because if you are in Sweden or Ireland or in Denmark, they're wearing much more coarser.
But that's because
wool.
the weather.
And in Italy, it all should be soft because I'm bringing the Dutch wool to the Italian spinner and they say, "Oh, you are crazy. What are you doing?" It's also a matter of mindset because if it's a stronger wool, we make pullovers out of it. You put it somewhere over it. You have to think about the design. So
it's the cold weather that makes the wool finer. But ours, I invite you, I would love it if you came because we have tried knitting it.
Please come and we can
I believe you. It's just a different kind of wool. I was just wondering.
It's a different kind of wool because the micron is the same. I know in Biella they are also doing the Italian sheep wool. From the Alps.
I think a clear example that wool is also a direct representation of the environment in which the animal lives, a mirror to what it eats.
Found the solution with the robo-tufting, but I'm very impressed because then it's actually a solvable problem for the Netherlands. You just need to educate and rebuild the supply chain.
And supply chain and customer demand. I really like the questions we're getting so far. Who would want to ask some more questions? Yeah, here in the front.
Thank you. My question is going back to the life cycle assessment, because as you spotted at the moment, it's really considering the wrong parameters, and we're still in that carbon tunnel. You mentioned two important things that we're missing out, the oil and the microplastics, but I think my question is, in your view, understanding natural materials, natural cycles, what do you think is missing? Because there's so many things that a life cycle assessment doesn't consider when it comes to the relevance of nature-based products.
I think personal health, for example, health in environments, healthy materials, because a lot of for example, due to heat stress, we use still for insulation in our housing rock wool, which is quite cheap, but above certain degrees, it evaporates toxic materials. That's a main reason not to use synthetics in your house, for example. That's health reasons, social aspects. I think that's very important too.
And the LCA, the carbon dioxide, is leading the green gases, but it's also biodiversity about the soil. Since the synthetics, we lost about 1/3 of the wild and half of the biodiversity. If we use natural fibers again, the farmers have time and money to take care of the landscape.
There's these new certifications coming up like the Meter, which has been around for a while, but I also heard recent studies on methane emissions from animal-based fibers, that methane is also damaging, but then it all depends on how you calculate, because if you look at the soil health and you consider the environment where the sheep lives, a contribution to biodiversity, and the soil also stores CO2. It's a nuanced conversation. Yesterday we had Lonneke de Kort over from Control Union, and we spoke about how these standards and certifications are constantly in development. At one point we'll hopefully get one that encompasses almost everything we know about the material, but right now there's standards on workers' conditions, the animal rights, CO2 emissions. Like, you have so many differences, and I think it's also a healthy development. Are there some more questions that we might be able to answer today?
Well, maybe we touched this already, but thank you very much. You've all very inspiring. Any tips or insights how we can convince bigger corporations to, let's say, the soil as your client or your consumer, and that's more important than selling? Planet over profit. I think that's the biggest challenge in corporations. But then to also make it fashionable for people to wear. And I know it is a big challenge. I think it's a fun one, but
yeah, when I started working with wool 30 years ago, it was not cool at all. So I moved to countries where they appreciate wool, which was England, London, and our main business is United States. Appreciation of handcraft, natural materials. The Healthy Material Lab in Parsons means a lot for corporate institutions to see what the impact, how do you feel in a space when you have natural materials. It really reduces your heartbeat, your body temperature, so really it slows you down. So always working on places and with people who appreciate, because it takes a lot of energy to pioneer and it costs a lot of investments to pioneer. Finding ambassadors from the network who are generous in contracting and who are willing to be part of the change. I think that's very important. We're always looking for people who are setting the tone and change makers and connecting to them to be more impactful.
I think you found a very fashionable collaboration between merino wool and Japanese indigo. That's beautiful.
it's
Two
fantastic.
incredible old crafts, combining traditions and make it modern.
May I ask just one question? Is there some kind of national or European wool federation where all this different type of information comes together so that we have a centralized organization where you can find all?
There is the International Wool Trade Organization. It's in Brussels, and you can check their site, and they have all kind of fact sheets. And they are making now the Green Book and trying to make all the data together, and that will be in 2027, I think it will come out, but they have all the last data. Of course, it's also a trade organization, but they collect all the data, so you can check that.
But I think also what intrigued me most was just be part of it and see it. Because when we visited Japanese indigo dyers, it's not a manual and you dip and you have the blue color. It's like having a lot of vessels and literally tasting by hand the quality of the water and smelling. It's beyond skill building. It's incredible. And I think if you once see that, the appreciation for these incredible qualities on an existential level, I think the same with the incredible collaboration with the shepherd at Waltham Place, the young woman. The knowledge, you cannot find that. It's like doing and working and experiencing in all seasons. I think that's essential, just being there.
And that's something to do in the UK, to get the children in and to see where it's taking place, to experience it yourself. Reina, maybe you have some final additions to this, though?
Storytelling and education, and that's the most thing. And when people are coming to our farm, there's nobody complaining about the price anymore, because they see everything, and then it's worthwhile. And that's, I think, if you really would be, if it's more transparent and you can see what everybody is doing, then it's no problem.
Yeah. I think we can have one final question and then we'll open up the space for some more one-on-one conversations. What can we learn from your regenerative pioneering practices? What should we take away as individuals, designers, people working at brands? What can we take away if you would have to say that in a few sentences from today?
Well, we just talked about it. It's quite difficult. And to be honest, although we ask €500, we are not on break even. And people are supporting, that helps,
Support it all together.
Generosity, I think, and just introducing to change makers already, being a collective, because this is what Loads is. It's a collective of people who are change makers.
Yeah.
Pioneering can be, you have to endure and you have to suffer a bit, but you have to keep faith, I think.
Yeah, keep faith. All right, I think it's time to wrap up for today. For now, at least we with a big thank you to our panel, Claudy and Reina. Give them a warm applause. Also, a special thanks to all our partners that made this program possible this year, and especially AV Partners for making this live stream possible. Leaves me with thanking you in the audience. Have a great day here at Dutch Design Week, and hopefully you've had a nice bit of inspiration. Thank you.